Shock. My sister invited everyone but me. Mom said it's her day. I laughed it off until photos show the groom dragging her, chaos breaking out. Mom called crying. I just whispered. Now they're shocked. Can you imagine the gut punch of realizing your own sister's wedding, her supposed happily ever after, was happening without you? It wasn't just an oversight. It was a brutal betrayal that started a chain reaction, exposing a web of lies so deep it left me wondering, what the hell actually happened next? I was just sipping my coffee at my desk, minding my own business, when the first wedding photo popped up on Instagram. White roses, silk tablecloths, the whole 9 yards. The caption read, "Can't wait for Sophie and Ethan's big day." And honestly, at first, I just smiled. It was my little sister's wedding after all, you know? But that smile, it froze. It absolutely shattered when I scrolled down. There it was, a full guest list, tagged right under the photo. Our cousins, her college friends, even our old babysitter was on there. I scrolled once, then twice, my heart pounding, just searching for my own name. It wasn't there. I checked again. Certain. Absolutely certain. It was some kind of mistake, but the truth was simple, sharp, and cut me deeper than anything ever had. Everyone had been invited. Everyone except me. I called Mom. She picked up on the second ring, her voice tight, like she'd been sitting there, waiting for this exact moment. "Claire, sweetheart, please. It's Sophie's day. Don't make it about you." I laughed, this brittle, cracked sound that broke halfway through. "About me?" I whispered, but she'd already launched into florists and seating charts, as if my question didn't even exist. That was the moment, right there, that I knew I wasn't just excluded from my sister's wedding. I was being erased. From my own family. The rain started an hour later, thin and persistent against my Portland windows. I stared at the drizzle, trying to pretend it didn't bother me. I'd learned to be the reasonable one years ago. The daughter who didn't make scenes, who didn't ask why Sophie got everything first. Still, my chest burned. You'd think by 34, rejection wouldn't sting like this, but family rejection? Man, that hits different. It's like being told your memories are no longer valid currency. By lunchtime, I was still scrolling through pictures. Sophie, beaming in a lace gown at her final fitting. Mom posting heart emojis like confetti. Dad commenting, "Our baby girl." I zoomed in on his words. Our baby girl. He hadn't written a thing under my promotion post 3 weeks ago, when my firm announced me as project lead on a huge downtown restoration. But for Sophie, he managed a whole paragraph. Typical. God, so typical. That night, I drove home in silence. The city was washed clean by the rain, everything blurring. My phone buzzed with a group message from the Donovan family chat. I hesitated, honestly, before opening it. And there it was. Sophie in her wedding dress, standing under a string of lights. Caption. "Can't believe it's finally happening. Hashtag Sophie and Ethan forever." Mom replied with hearts. Dad sent a champagne emoji. Nobody noticed I hadn't said a word. I typed and deleted 3 different replies before just leaving the chat altogether. I couldn't sit there watching them celebrate an event I wasn't even worthy of attending. My apartment felt colder than usual when I got home. I poured wine, curled on the couch, and just stared at the ceiling. Maybe it was a misunderstanding, I told myself. Maybe an invitation got lost in the mail. Family screw up, right? By midnight, though, I knew it wasn't an accident. My phone buzzed again. A message from Mom. "Don't take this personally, honey. Sophie wanted to keep things small. You know how you two can get." I set the phone face down on the counter, my heart thudding. How we can get? As if I was the problem to be managed. She made it sound like my mere presence would contaminate the photographs. I leaned back on the couch and closed my eyes. Every memory I'd ever stored about my family suddenly felt different. The colors drained out. The birthdays I'd planned when Mom forgot. The rent checks I helped Sophie cover after her breakup. The times I dropped everything because someone needed me. Apparently, none of it mattered now that they had something worth posting about. The next morning, I drove across town to the old Donovan house on Hawthorne Boulevard. The air smelled like wet pine and nostalgia. From the curb, the house looked almost the same as when I'd left it. Pale yellow siding, garden overgrown with roses, the porch light always left on too early. Inside, Mom was stirring soup, pretending not to be startled when I walked in. "Claire, what a surprise!" She wiped her hands on a towel, glancing toward the dining room where printed menus and ribbons were spread across the table. "We're just finishing the last wedding details. You should have called first." "I tried," I said quietly. "You didn't answer." She sighed. "Oh, sweetheart, I don't want any tension before the big day. You know how sensitive Sophie is." Sensitive? That word again. The shield Sophie had worn her entire life. I remember being 10 and watching her spill juice all over Dad's tax papers, crying until I took the blame. Remembered her high school graduation when she forgot to apply for scholarships, and Mom convinced me to give her half of mine. Just this once. Every family has a Sophie. The golden one. The one you're expected to orbit around. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked about the invitations. Mom avoided my eyes. "You've been so busy, dear. Your work schedule, the travel." I didn't want to pressure you. Pressure me. I laughed. You didn't want me there. Her expression tightened. That's not true. But we both know you and your sister haven't exactly gotten along. I took a step closer. You mean since she used my name to open a studio she never paid for? Let's not rehash old wounds, she said, straightening a stack of menus like the conversation was paperwork she could file away. This is supposed to be a happy occasion. For who? I asked. She said nothing. The only sound was the spoon clinking against the pot. Dad came in from the garage, smelling like cedar and sawdust. Claire, good to see you. He hesitated when he saw my face. Everything okay? I waited for him to say more. For some sign he disagreed with Mom, but he just put an arm around her shoulders. Let's not make today difficult. I nodded slowly. Got it. Wouldn't want to ruin the photo ops. Mom's mouth opened, but I was already reaching for my coat. If Sophie wants a perfect wedding, I said, my voice like ice, she can have it without me. Outside, the sky had cleared, bright and cruelly blue. I sat in my car, hands gripping the steering wheel until the tension burned out of me. I wasn't crying. I was past that. What I felt was something colder, cleaner, clarity. On the drive back downtown, my phone buzzed with notifications. Cousin Laura posting. Can't wait for the wedding of the year. My aunt sharing Sophie's engagement video with the caption. So proud of our girls. I almost laughed. Our girls. Apparently, that meant everyone except the one who paid off their mortgage when Dad lost his job. I reached my apartment, parked in the garage, and sat in silence. Until my phone vibrated again. This time, it wasn't family. It was my friend Jenna, who worked part-time for a wedding planner in Lake Oswego. Claire, you need to see something. She sent a photo. Ethan, the groom, leaning too close to a woman I didn't recognize, his hand resting on her hip at a bar. The timestamp was 2 nights ago. I stared at the image, my heart thudding once hard. Then again. Who is she? I texted back. No idea, Jenna replied, but he's been here before. My coworker said he's handsy. Thought you should know. Outside, thunder rolled again, distant but moving closer. I set the phone down, watching the screen dim to black. So Sophie hadn't invited me to her wedding. Fine. But maybe, just maybe, the story wasn't finished yet. Because weddings have a way of showing what's real. And sometimes, the best seat in the house is the one farthest from the altar. Mom called 3 days later. Her voice sugar-sweet and trembling at the edges. Come home for dinner, Claire. Let's talk this through like family. I should have hung up, but curiosity, or maybe just habit won. The word, family, still had gravity, even when it shouldn't. I said I'd come by at 7. Rain slicked the streets on my drive to Hawthorne Boulevard. Headlights bleeding across wet pavement. The closer I got, the heavier the air felt. The porch light was already on, that same amber glow that used to mean welcome. Now it looked more like a warning. The house hadn't changed. Same crack step. Same wind chimes, shaped like tiny wine bottles Sophie bought at a street fair years ago. Inside, it smelled like baked lasagna, Mom's peace offering dish. She smiled when I walked in, the kind of smile people use when they're hoping you'll forget something unforgivable. Sweetheart. She kissed my cheek, then busied herself arranging silverware. Sit down. Dinner's almost ready. Dad was already at the table, a newspaper folded beside his plate. He looked older than I remembered, shoulders rounded, eyes tired. Good to see you, he said quietly. I took the seat across from them, the same one I used to take during Sunday dinners when we'd argue about curfews and college choices. The room even smelled the same. Sauce, a hint of lemon cleaner, but the warmth was gone. Mom poured wine like it was olive oil, filling her glass to the brim. I don't want any tension tonight, she said brightly. Let's just have a nice meal. I stabbed a piece of lasagna, waiting for the real reason I was here. It came halfway through her second glass. Sweetheart, she began, her tone rehearsed. Sophie never meant to hurt you. Weddings are complicated. Emotions run high. She didn't invite me, Mom, I said. That's not complicated. That's deliberate. Mom sighed, the sound of a martyr adjusting her halo. You know how your sister is, sensitive. She just wants her day to be joyful. Joyful? That word twisted in my gut, and me being there would ruin that. Claire, Dad murmured, let's not start. No, I cut in. Let's finish for once. Mom's fork clinked against her plate. You always think everything is an attack. Sophie has been through a lot. Her studio failed. Her engagement fell apart. Her studio failed because she opened it under my name. I said, my voice steady but sharp. She tanked my credit for 2 years. But sure, let's throw her a parade. Mom's eyes narrowed, that familiar mix of pity and irritation. You're stronger than she is. You can handle disappointment. There it was, the family motto. I almost laughed. You mean I can handle being used? Her smile cracked. Don't twist my words. I don't have to, I said. They twist themselves. Dad reached for his glass but didn't drink. Maybe we should all take a breath. Mom turned on him, sharp as glass. Don't start, Richard. She's always been dramatic. I leaned back. You've called me dramatic since I was 12, Mom. When Sophie crashed my bike, and you said I should have been watching her. When she lied about the scholarship money, and you said, "Don't make a scene." All I ever did was clean up her messes. Silence pressed against the walls. The only sound was the rain ticking against the kitchen window. Finally, Mom said, "You make it sound like we don't love you." I met her gaze. "You love me as long as I'm useful." Her lips parted, but no words came out. I pushed back from the table. If Sophie wanted peace, she could have started by inviting her sister. Mom stood too, suddenly desperate. "Please don't do this now. The wedding's in a week. I don't want bad energy around it." "Bad energy?" I laughed quietly. "You've been feeding on mine for years." I grabbed my coat. Dad rose halfway, unsure whether to stop me. "Claire," he said softly, "you know your mother just wants the family together. She wants control, Dad. Don't confuse the two." He looked down, saying nothing. I turned to leave, but Mom's voice followed me, low and cold. "You've always been jealous of your sister." The words hit harder than they should have. I froze by the doorway. "Jealous?" She folded her arms. "You never liked how people adored her. The attention, the compliments. Attention doesn't equal respect, Mom." I looked her dead in the eye. "You raised one daughter to sparkle, and the other to fix the wiring when the lights went out." I stepped out into the rain, but before I reached the car, she called after me, her tone brittle with anger and fear. "Don't ruin this for her, Claire. Promise me you won't do anything stupid." I turned back, water dripping from my hair. "Don't worry," I said. "I won't have to. You've already done it for both of us." The drive back to my apartment was silent, except for the hum of tires on wet asphalt. I could still hear her voice looping in my head. That mixture of guilt and manipulation she perfected over decades. "You're stronger than she is. You can handle it." Translation, "You'll take the hit, so she doesn't have to." By the time I parked, my hands had stopped shaking. Anger had cooled into something steadier, resolve. I wasn't going to beg for a seat at a table that was already rotting. I walked into my apartment, hung my coat, poured a glass of water, and set my phone on the counter. One new message blinked on the screen from Jenna. "You need to see this." Attached was a photo of Ethan, the groom, at some upscale downtown bar, standing far too close to the same woman from before. His hand rested on her lower back, the intimacy of someone who'd done it more than once. Beneath it, Jenna had typed, "He's not who they think he is. Thought you should know before it blows up." I stared at the image for a long moment. Ethan's perfect grin looked different now, almost rehearsed. The golden couple, Sophie and Ethan, were already cracking before the vows. I sank onto the couch, the rain outside steady and relentless. 4 years, I'd been the family's cleanup crew, the responsible one, the fixer. Maybe this time, I wouldn't fix anything. Maybe I'd just watch. I thought about Mom's parting words. "Promise me you won't do anything stupid." And I almost smiled. She still hadn't learned that sometimes the smartest thing you can do is nothing at all. When I finally went to bed, the city was quiet except for the faint buzz of traffic far away. On the nightstand, my phone vibrated once more. A text from Dad, simple and short. "They should have invited you." I stared at it until the screen dimmed. For the first time in years, I felt seen. And that tiny flicker of acknowledgement, so late, so small, was enough to light something new inside me. Not forgiveness, not yet, but clarity. They thought excluding me would keep their little world peaceful. They had no idea peace was the last thing coming. Growing up, Sophie was the sun, and I was the shadow that made her look brighter. Mom used to say, "Your sister just has that spark, Claire. You're the steady one, the responsible one, the one who cleaned up the messes and didn't complain." At 10, I already knew what my role was, to be reliable, invisible, and always just fine. I remember one Saturday morning when we were kids. Sophie spilled an entire carton of milk across the kitchen floor. White river soaking the rug. Mom rushed over, cooing, "It's okay, sweetheart. Accidents happen." When I grabbed a towel to clean it, she frowned at me. "Claire, be careful. You're making a bigger mess." I was 7. That was the first time I realized how differently love could sound depending on who it was spoken to. By high school, the pattern had become muscle memory. Sophie cried and everyone jumped. I succeeded and nobody noticed. She got the lead in the school musical because she just shines on stage, even though I'd helped her memorize every line. I got straight A's and Mom said, "That's expected of you." When I was accepted to the architecture program at Oregon State, Dad clapped my shoulder, proud. Mom just asked, "Will you still have time to help your sister with her art portfolio?" I used to think maybe they couldn't help it. Maybe every family had a favorite. But the older I got, the more it felt intentional, like Mom needed someone to be the anchor, so she could keep pretending the ship wasn't sinking. Sophie floated through life with effortless charm. At 21, she had a blog, 10,000 followers, and an ever-rotating list of creative projects. I had student loans and a full-time job that didn't allow sick days. She called me when her rent was late, when her boyfriend left, when she couldn't figure out her taxes. "You're so good at this stuff, Claire," she'd say, her voice sugar-coated guilt. And like a fool, I'd transfer the money or drive over with a box of takeout, telling myself, that's what family did. The last time I bailed her out was 5 years ago. She called, crying. Said she had a big opportunity, a photography studio downtown, but she needed someone to co-sign the lease. It'll be my dream, Claire. You believe in me, right? She caught me between exhaustion and hope, and I said, yes. The studio closed 8 months later. She vanished without paying rent, leaving me with a $25,000 debt and an apology text that read, you'll figure it out. You always do. When I told Mom, she said, your sister didn't mean to hurt you. She just gets overwhelmed. I remember laughing bitterly, asking, what do I get to be, Mom? The designated lesson? She didn't answer. That was the day something inside me started to crack. Since then, Sophie and I spoke only when necessary. Birthdays, holidays, Mom's guilt-driven family dinners. On those nights, she'd show up late, smelling like expensive perfume and confidence, and Mom would beam at her as if she cured cancer. I'd sit across the table, sipping wine, pretending it didn't bother me. But it did. It always did. When Sophie got engaged to Ethan last year, Mom called crying with joy. He's perfect for her, Claire. So grounded, so successful. Finally, someone who can take care of her. I'd almost dropped the phone. You mean someone else to pay her bills? She scolded me for being cynical, then sent me a photo of Sophie's ring. A flawless diamond sparkling under perfect lighting. I met Ethan once at Mom's birthday dinner. He had that slick, easy confidence of men who've never had to fight for anything. He complimented my job, then asked if I ever regretted not doing something creative. When I said architecture was creative, he smiled condescendingly. Sure, but I meant something more expressive, like Sophie's work. Mom had laughed, touching his arm. He's right, Claire. You've always been so practical. That night, I drove home, gripping the steering wheel so hard my hands hurt. I wasn't jealous of Sophie. I was just done being the baseline everyone measured her against. Now, sitting on my couch with rain tapping against the window, I scrolled through Sophie's latest post, her engagement shoot at the coast. She looked flawless, waves crashing behind her, Ethan kissing her temple. The caption read, can't wait to marry my best friend. Some people are just meant to find forever. I could practically hear Mom squealing while typing hearts in the comments. I set the phone down, the wine glass cold in my hand. Part of me wanted to delete every photo, block them all, start clean. The other part couldn't look away, like watching a slow-motion car crash you knew was coming. My phone buzzed. A message from Jenna lit up the screen. That girl in the bar photo, her name's Kelsey. She used to work for Ethan. He dated her before Sophie. I blinked. Dated or cheated? I typed back. Both, Jenna replied. Rumor is he got her fired when she threatened to tell HR. The words made my stomach twist. Of course this was the man Sophie thought would save her. I wasn't even surprised. I felt something colder than anger, confirmation. I closed my eyes and exhaled. Maybe I should have felt pity for her. But pity is exhausting when it's all you've ever had to give. I opened my laptop and went searching. Years of digital breadcrumbs were easy to find. Bank statements, emails, the old lease from the studio. Every loan that never came back. I created a new folder on my desktop and named it Sophie. Truth. I didn't know what I'd do with it yet, but I knew I was done pretending I didn't care. Outside, the storm picked up, wind rattling the balcony door. I looked out at the skyline, gray, restless, alive, and felt something stir inside me. For once, I wasn't thinking about keeping the peace. I was thinking about what peace might actually cost. It was strange realizing that after all these years of holding everything together, maybe the healthiest thing I could do was let it all fall apart. I stood, stretching the stiffness out of my back, and caught my reflection in the window. Same eyes, same face, but the expression was new. Not sadness, not even anger. Something sharper, steadier. Mom's words from dinner echoed in my head. Promise me you won't do anything stupid. I smiled at the reflection, small but real. Oh, I won't, I whispered. I shut the laptop, turned off the lights, and let the dark settle around me. 4 years, I'd been the responsible one, the fixer, the invisible daughter who kept everything running while everyone else got to fall apart. But maybe being responsible didn't mean saving them anymore. Maybe it meant saving myself. Somewhere in that thought, beneath the hum of city rain, I felt the first pulse of something dangerous and liberating, a decision forming slow and certain like the build of a storm. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel small in Sophie's shadow. I felt like the light she should have been afraid of all along. The day of the wedding arrived, gray and humid. The kind of Portland morning that felt undecided, like even the sky didn't know which side it was on. I woke up early without meaning to. My phone was flooded with notifications, pictures, tags, captions filled with hearts and hashtags. Hashtag Sophie and Ethan forever. Hashtag happily ever after. I scrolled through smiling faces that didn't include mine. Mom looked radiant in pale blue, holding Sophie's bouquet in one photo. Dad looked proud, but the pride felt performative. His smile stretched tight. And Sophie, God, Sophie looked like every magazine bride. Hair, makeup, happiness manicured to perfection. I tossed the phone onto the couch and stood by the window. The air smelled like wet concrete. Somewhere downtown, they were exchanging vows. I pictured it. Mom crying. Sophie trembling with excitement. Ethan saying all the right words with all the wrong meaning. I should have felt rage, but instead, I felt a strange distance, like I was watching someone else's family through glass. Still, the silence in my apartment felt too loud. I turned on the TV for noise, flipped through channels, and ended up on a local news segment showing live coverage from the same venue, the Rosewood Pavilion. I almost laughed. Of course, Sophie's wedding was newsworthy. The Donovans love a performance. At first, everything looked perfect. White tents, soft lighting, live string quartet. Then the camera jolted, catching commotion near the reception tent. A woman's voice off-screen said, "Is someone fighting?" The clip cut out. I froze. 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed. Jenna again. "Claire, are you watching this? Something's happening at the wedding." Another message came before I could reply. "Photos are all over Twitter." I opened the link she sent. The first picture nearly made me drop the phone. Ethan, still in his tuxedo, his hand wrapped around Sophie's hair, yanking her head back while she screamed. Guests stood frozen, champagne flutes midair. The next image showed people rushing between them, chaos spilling like ink across the beautiful setting. My heart pounded. I couldn't breathe for a second. Not because I felt shock, but because I wasn't surprised at all. I'd seen it coming the moment I saw Ethan's eyes that first night. The way he talked over Sophie, corrected her stories, called her sweetheart, like a command instead of affection. The phone rang. Mom's name flashed across the screen. For a heartbeat, I considered ignoring it. Then I answered. Her voice was hysterical. "Claire, thank God. Where are you?" "Sophie's hurt. Everything's ruined. You have to come." I leaned against the counter, closing my eyes. "Why would I come, Mom? I wasn't invited." "Please," she sobbed. "She needs her sister. The police are here. Reporters. God, Claire, it's everywhere." I said nothing. The sound of chaos echoed faintly through the phone. Crying, shouting. Someone asking for towels. Mom's voice cracked. "She's bleeding." He pulled her hair so hard. "Oh God. Call an ambulance," I said flatly. "You don't need me for that." "Claire, don't be cruel. I know you're angry, but she's your sister." I stared at my reflection in the kitchen window, my expression unreadable. "Yeah," I said softly. "She's my sister. That used to mean something." "Please," Mom whispered, her voice small. "Just help us fix this." Fix. That word again. The family's favorite verb. When everything fell apart, I was the designated glue. "Pay the bills. Keep the peace. Hold the line." "No," I said. "You fix it. You wanted this perfect wedding. You wanted me quiet. You got both." I hung up before she could answer. My hands shook, but not from guilt. From release. The next hour passed in fragments. News clips, photos, text messages from extended relatives I hadn't heard from in years. Everyone wanted information. Was it true? What happened? Where's Sophie now? I ignored them all. When the front door buzzer rang, I flinched. It was Jenna, rain-soaked and breathless, clutching her phone. "It's bad," she said, stepping inside. "Really bad. The video's gone viral. Half the city's seen it." She showed me the clip, 40 seconds long, filmed by a guest. The camera caught Sophie laughing at something. Ethan leaning in, whispering something sharp. Her smile faltered. She turned to walk away. He grabbed her hair, jerking her backward. The guest gasped. Mom screamed. The camera jolted as someone rushed in, and the video ended. Jenna lowered the phone. "They're saying he was drunk, but someone overheard them arguing earlier. Apparently, she accused him of cheating." I pressed a hand to my forehead. "With who?" "Kelsey," Jenna said quietly. "The same woman from the bar." I felt the room tilt, the slow vertigo of déjà vu. Of course, it came full circle. Sophie's story always did. "You think she knew?" I asked. Jenna shrugged. Maybe she found out today." Outside, sirens wailed somewhere distant. My phone buzzed again. This time, a voicemail from Mom. I didn't listen. I couldn't. Instead, I walked to the window. The rain had stopped, but the sky was still heavy. Below, the streetlights shimmered against the wet asphalt. I thought about Sophie, her perfect life collapsing in real time, cameras catching every second. For once, the family secrets weren't private anymore. Jenna broke the silence. "Are you okay?" I nodded slowly. "Better than I should be." She hesitated. "You don't sound sad." "I'm not." She looked at me like she didn't know whether to be concerned or impressed. "What are you going to do?" I turned away from the window, my reflection cutting through the glass. Half light, half shadow. "Nothing," I said. "Not yet." That night, I didn't sleep. The internet exploded with speculation. Was it drugs? A mental breakdown? A setup? Every headline carried Sophie's name. Every photo carried her humiliation. At 2 a.m., my phone buzzed again. Dad, this time just 3 words. She's at the hospital. I typed back. Is she alive? Yes. Concussion. They're keeping her overnight. I stared at the message until the words blurred. Then I typed, she'll survive. She always does. I put the phone face down and went out to the balcony. The air was cold, damp, sharp with the scent of rain. Somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed again, fading into the dark. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like the responsible one. I felt like the witness, the only person in the family who'd stopped pretending things were fine. When dawn broke, my phone lit up again. Reporters were asking for comments. Someone had tagged me in a post. Sister of the bride speaks out. I almost laughed. They thought silence was weakness. They didn't understand it was power. I poured coffee and sat by the window, watching the city wake. Somewhere out there, my family was unraveling exactly the way they'd sewn it. Thread by thread, lie by lie. Mom would call again. Sophie would beg. They want me to clean up the mess. Smooth over the story. Make everyone forget. But I wasn't their fixer anymore. I sipped my coffee and whispered to the empty room. This time, you get to handle your own disaster. The city outside was gray and cold, but the light creeping through the clouds felt like something new, something honest. Maybe this was what freedom looked like. Not joy, not revenge, just the quiet certainty that I didn't owe them a damn thing anymore. The morning after the wedding felt like waking up after a storm you hadn't survived, but somehow still had to clean up. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing, calls from numbers I didn't recognize, messages from relatives who'd ignored me for years, voicemails that started with pity and ended with guilt. By 8 a.m., the story was everywhere. Viral video, groom attacks bride during wedding reception. Family in shock after public meltdown at Portland venue. And then, inevitably, who is the sister who skipped the wedding? My name wasn't in the headlines yet, but it was only a matter of time. I scrolled through comment sections until I hated humanity all over again. Strangers debated my family's private hell like it was a TV show. Some defended Sophie, others blamed her. One commenter wrote, maybe she knew what he was like. People marry red flags all the time. I shut my laptop and stared at the ceiling. Somewhere between anger and numbness, I realized I wasn't shocked. Sophie's life had always been about the performance. She built herself out of illusion, pretty pictures, edited captions, filtered everything. It made sense that the truth would finally break through in front of an audience. By 10, Mom called again. I didn't answer. She left another voicemail, voice tight from crying. Claire, your sister needs you. Please come to the hospital. She's asking for you. Whatever happened before, it doesn't matter now. She needs her family. I deleted it without listening to the rest. The hospital was 10 minutes away. I didn't go. Instead, I spent the afternoon walking the riverfront, the city gray and heavy. Tourists moved in herds, pretending they didn't notice the air buzzing with gossip. Every coffee shop TV replayed that 30-second clip of the wedding chaos. I caught snippets of conversation as I passed people. That poor girl. The groom looked drunk. Where were her parents? That last question stayed with me. Where were they indeed? Back at my apartment, I finally gave in and called Dad. He picked up on the first ring, sounding older, brittle. Claire, he said. Thank God. I didn't bother with small talk. How's Sophie? She'll live. Stitches on her scalp, a mild concussion. He hesitated. She's asking for you. I'm not sure that's a good idea. She made a mistake, Claire. You know how impulsive she can be. Ethan, he's a monster. But your sister's paying the price. I closed my eyes. She's always been impulsive. You and Mom just let her stay that way. Don't start, he said softly. Your mother's a wreck. The police have been calling, reporters showing up at the house. We can't handle this alone. I almost laughed. You handled everything without me just fine. Remember, I wasn't invited. That was your mother's decision, he said. You know how she gets. Yeah, I said quietly. I do. We stayed silent for a moment, the distance between us louder than anything. Finally, he said, Please, Claire, just come see your sister. I hung up without answering. That evening, the first news article with my name in it appeared online. Claire Donovan, architect, older sister of the bride, was notably absent from the ceremony. There was a picture of me from a company event, cropped and grainy. The caption read, Family sources confirm long-standing tension between the sisters. It shouldn't have bothered me, but it did. Not because of the exposure, but because of how easily the world believed the version of me they invented. Cold, distant, unforgiving. They had no idea how many times I'd save those people. Around midnight, I opened a bottle of whiskey I'd been saving since my last promotion. The city outside was quiet, except for the hum of passing cars. I poured a glass, sat on the couch, and opened my old email folders. Dozens of payment confirmations stared back at me. Money I transferred to Mom and Dad, to Sophie. Rent, medical bills, wedding deposits. Little pieces of myself siphoned off over 8 years of helping. I clicked through the receipts until my eyes blurred. Each one was a reminder they hadn't just forgotten me, they'd used me. When my phone buzzed again, I ignored it. But then the buzz turned to pounding, the kind of urgent knock that made your pulse jump. I set the glass down and went to the door. It was Dad. He stood in the hallway, looking smaller than I remembered. His jacket soaked from the drizzle. His eyes red. "You weren't answering," he said. "I didn't know where else to go. Mom sent you." He hesitated. "She doesn't know I'm here." I stepped aside. "Then come in." He sat on the edge of the couch, clutching his hat in both hands. The silence stretched. Finally, he said, "Your mother's falling apart. She can't eat, can't sleep. Sophie's refusing to press charges against Ethan. Says she doesn't want to ruin his life." My chest tightened. "He assaulted her, Dad." He nodded miserably. "She says he's sorry." Of course she did. Sophie's whole life was built on forgiveness she hadn't earned and second chances she didn't deserve. She's going back to him, isn't she? He didn't answer. That was enough. I poured him a glass of water and sat across from him. "You came here for something. What is it?" He looked down, ashamed. "We're drowning, Claire. The media won't leave us alone. Your mother's terrified. We need help. Help." I repeated. "What kind?" "Lawyers say we could get sued for emotional distress. The venue's demanding payment for damages. And your mother's thinking of refinancing the house." I laughed, sharp, humorless. "You're unbelievable." He flinched. "I didn't come for money." "Then what did you come for?" "To ask you not to hate us." His voice cracked on the last word. "We made mistakes, Claire. But we're still family." I stared at him for a long moment. Then I said, "You want forgiveness before you've earned honesty." He blinked, confused. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means I know about the accounts. The trust. The money you and Mom took out under my name." His face went pale. "How? How did you?" "Doesn't matter," I said. "You lied, Dad. For years." He slumped forward, head in his hands. "It was your mother's idea. She said it was temporary. We just needed to keep the house. You had options." I snapped. "You chose the one that stole from me." The words hung heavy between us. He looked up, eyes glassy. "We thought you'd understand." "I did," I said quietly. "Until I didn't." He stood slowly, shoulders sagging. "I'll tell her I talked to you. Just don't make this worse." I walked him to the door, every muscle tight with restraint. Before he left, he turned back. "You're stronger than all of us, Claire. But strength doesn't mean shutting the door forever." I met his eyes. "Maybe it does." After he was gone, I stood in the doorway, letting the cold air seep in. My heart was pounding, but not with rage. With resolve. They built their lives on the assumption that I'd always forgive, always protect. But they were about to find out what happens when the family safety net decides it's done catching falling people. The next morning, I opened a new email to someone I hadn't spoken to in years. Michael Gray, a lawyer who'd once helped my firm through a messy contract dispute. I wrote just one line before hitting send. "Need to discuss a personal legal matter. Family related. Urgent." Outside, the city woke under another gray sky. I took a long breath, the first one in weeks that didn't hurt. For the first time, I wasn't waiting for their apology. I was preparing for justice. Michael Gray met me at a cafe downtown 2 days later. The kind of quiet spot where business conversations blended into the hum of espresso machines. He was early, suit pressed, silver streaks in his hair. That made him look more trustworthy than anyone I'd met in years. When I walked in, he stood, shook my hand firmly, and said, "You look like someone who's been holding a lot for too long." I sat down and managed a half smile. "You have no idea. We ordered coffee, black for him, something stronger for me. When the waitress left, I told him everything. The years of financial help, the family manipulation, the forged documents I discovered on my laptop. I showed him the folder labeled Sophie. Truth. He listened without interrupting, jotting notes in a small leather notebook. When I finished, the silence between us felt heavier than the rain outside. Finally, he said, "You've been the family accountant, therapist, and scapegoat. That's a dangerous job description." "I didn't apply for it," I said quietly. He nodded. "No one ever does." I handed him the flash drive with copies of the documents. "They used my money, Michael. My business account. They called it temporary. I didn't even know they'd taken out loans against the house." He studied the files on his tablet. "I've seen a lot of family financial abuse cases, but this was premeditated. They created a paper trail that makes it look like you were complicit." I stared at him. "What does that mean for me?" He gave a small, grim smile. "I think people do desperate things to protect the lies that built their lives." I leaned back, my pulse quickening. "So what's next?" He flipped a page in his notebook. "We start with information. You said your parents refinanced the house. Did you ever sign anything?" "No. But they used my transfers to make payments. I have the receipts." "That's good," he said. "We'll file for a forensic review of those transactions. If the funds came from you and they used them to secure additional loans, that's fraud. We can build from there." The words sounded both terrifying and satisfying. Michael closed his notebook. "Before we file anything, I want to be sure you're ready for what comes next. Once this starts, there's no going back to Sunday dinners and polite silence." I gave a dry laugh. Those end of the day, they sent wedding invitations to everyone but me. He smiled faintly. Fair point. The waitress dropped off our coffees. The smell of dark roast filled the air, grounding me in the moment. Michael leaned forward. Here's the truth, Claire. Families like yours run on guilt and loyalty. When you take those away, they crumble. Are you ready to watch that happen? I looked down at my hands. They were steady now, not trembling like before. They already crumbled. I'm just done pretending they didn't. He nodded once, satisfied. Then we'll start with a claim for financial exploitation. Oregon law has specific statutes for this, especially when it involves relatives. If we can prove intent, and from what you've shown me, we can, you'll not only recover damages but also clear your name. I let out a slow breath. So, I won't just be the family's scapegoat anymore. No, he said. You'll be the plaintiff. Something inside me shifted at that word. 4 years, I'd been cleaning up their chaos. Now, I could turn that same precision into a weapon. After our meeting, I drove to the riverfront. The air smelled like rain and salt from the Willamette. I parked, rolled the windows down, and let the wind whip my hair around. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel tired. I felt awake. My phone buzzed with a message from Mom. Your sister's home. She wants to talk. Don't shut us out, Claire. I stared at the text, then deleted it. Some bridges weren't burned. They were demolished for safety reasons. That night, I pulled every file I could find. Emails, transfers, even texts from Mom thanking me for covering utilities. I organized them into a binder, tabs by year. Each page felt like another nail, sealing the coffin on the person they'd trained me to be. At midnight, Michael called. Got a minute? Always, I said. I reviewed more of the documents. There's something strange about the home equity loan. What kind of strange? It was co-signed by Sophie, he said. She claimed to live there full-time, which she hasn't done in years. And the loan payments match almost exactly to your monthly transfers. I stood up, heart hammering. They were using my money to pay off their illegal loan. Exactly. Which means you've been unknowingly funding fraud. The silence on my end was sharp. So everything I sent them, everything, was part of their cover-up. Looks that way, he said. And there's more. The deed transfer shows Sophie a secondary trustee of the house. That wouldn't happen unless your parents were planning to give it to her eventually. I sank onto the couch. So, the house, the one I helped them save all these years, was never going to be mine. Not even close, he said softly. But now it can be evidence. After we hung up, I sat in the dark for a long time. The city outside glowed faintly, the sound of rain returning against the glass. My whole life had been built around responsibility, showing up, paying up, keeping quiet. Now responsibility meant something different. It meant telling the truth, even if it destroyed everything that came before. The next morning, I printed every document Michael had flagged and took the drive to his office in the Pearl District. He greeted me with that same calm focus, spreading papers across his desk like puzzle pieces. I've seen greed before, he said. But what your family did, it's almost strategic. They kept you believing you were saving them, so you'd never realize they were using you. I nodded, jaw tight. Well, they taught me strategy too. He smiled slightly. Good. You'll need it. I've already started drafting the complaint. Once it's filed, they'll be served within a week. What happens then? They'll have 2 choices. Settle quietly or fight it in court. Either way, the truth comes out. I felt a strange calm settle over me. Let them fight. Michael slid a pen toward me. Then let's make it official. I signed the papers. My name looked different in ink. Sharper, bolder, like it finally belonged to someone who knew her worth. As I left his office, the clouds broke for the first time in days. The sun spilled through in thin golden streaks, lighting up the wet streets. I stood there for a moment, breathing it in. Mom once told me that family loyalty was the glue that kept us together. But glue, I realized, only holds things that are already broken. And I was done being the adhesive for everyone else's damage. By the time I reached my car, Michael had texted, "Keep your phone close. Things will move fast now." I looked back at the city skyline, its edges sharp against the clearing sky. 4 years, they'd written the story, and I'd been the quiet footnote. Not anymore. This time, my name would be the headline. The envelope was heavier than I expected. Thick manila, stamped confidential, Donovan family assets. Michael slid it across the cafe table without a word. The rain had stopped outside, but drops still slid down the window like the sky wasn't ready to let go. "You sure you want to open it here?" he asked. I traced the edge of the flap, then met his eyes. "I've waited long enough." When I tore it open, I didn't find closure. I found proof. The first page was a spreadsheet. Dates, amounts, account numbers. Michael leaned forward, tapping a column with his pen. "These are your transfers. Every one of them." I scanned the list. 8 years' worth of payments from my checking to theirs. Each labeled household support, loan repayment, or utilities. My stomach tightened when I saw the total at the bottom. $84,000. He flipped to the next sheet. Bank statements. "Now look here," he said. They set up a secondary account under your mother's name called Family Trust Reserve. Guess what those payments were used for? I looked closer. Mortgage transfers, loan payments, shopping transactions at luxury stores. Wait, I said slowly. They used my money to pay for a loan I didn't even know existed? He nodded. Exactly. They took out a home equity loan in 2023, $180,000, and the repayments matched almost perfectly with your monthly transfers. I pressed a hand to my forehead. So, I've been paying their debt without knowing it. Michael's voice was calm but sharp. They've been hiding it behind your generosity. It's classic family exploitation, financial manipulation disguised as need. I stared at the paper until the numbers blurred. All those nights I'd worked overtime, the vacations I skipped, the things I said no to so I could help them. It was all feeding a lie. He opened another file. Inside was a property transfer document. This, he said, is the house deed. The header read, Transfer of Property, Donovan Family Trust. Below it, Sophie's name appeared as co-trustee, co-signer, and eventual beneficiary. They transferred ownership last year, he said. Filed quietly through an attorney in Lake Oswego. I couldn't breathe. So, while they were taking my money to pay off a loan, they were also making sure I'd never see a cent of that house. Michael nodded once. They planned this. And from the signatures here, your father, your mother, and Sophie, they all knew. The cafe noise faded, replaced by the thud of my heartbeat. I looked out the window, past the dripping awning, at people walking by with umbrellas. None of them knew what it felt like to realize your entire family had built a home on your money and buried your name under their lies. Michael's voice broke through the fog. There's more. He pulled out a USB drive. Found this in the file. Labeled Meeting September 2023. Looks like a recorded conversation. I hesitated, then nodded. He plugged it into his laptop, pressed play. The audio was muffled at first. Clinking glasses, the hum of voices. Then I heard it. My mother's voice. Calm. Certain. If Claire ever finds out, we'll just tell her it was a misunderstanding. She won't fight us. She never does. There was laughter in the background. My sister's voice followed, light and smug. She's too responsible to cause drama. That's the beauty of it. Something inside me snapped. Not in anger, but in clarity. 8 years of silence fell away in one clean break. Michael paused the recording. That's intent, Claire. That's everything we need. I swallowed hard. I don't even know what to feel. Start with relief, he said softly. You're not crazy. I sat back, breathing slow. My mother's words echoed in my head. She never fights US. Well, I said quietly. She's about to learn. Michael watched me for a moment, then nodded. Good, because we're filing the claim tomorrow. You'll get served copies after they're notified. It'll move fast from there. I turned the USB drive over in my hand, the small piece of plastic that held 8 years of deception. What happens after that? They'll scramble, he said. They'll panic. They might even try to talk you out of it. Don't engage. I won't. He smiled slightly. I believe you. When we left the cafe, the clouds had thickened again. I walked to my car as the first drops began to fall, cold and precise. By the time I shut the door, it was pouring rain, hammering the roof, washing the city clean. My phone buzzed with a new message. Unknown number. Claire, it's Aunt Helen. Call me when you can. Your father left something for you before he got sick. I think it's time you saw it. I stared at the message, pulse quickening. Aunt Helen, my father's sister, had always been the quiet observer, the only one who saw through Mom's act. If she had something now, it meant more truths were waiting. I drove through the rain toward home, headlights cutting through the gray. The streets shimmered like mirrors, the world upside down and wet. Somewhere between stoplights, I realized I wasn't angry anymore. Anger was a fire. What I felt now was steel. When I reached my apartment, I poured whiskey and spread the papers across my kitchen table. Each page told a story my family had spent years covering up. Each lie lined up neatly, evidence of a pattern older than I'd ever guessed. My phone buzzed again. Mom, this time. I didn't answer. The voicemail icon blinked once, but I ignored it. I didn't need to hear her reasons. I stared at the documents until midnight, the city humming beyond the glass. Michael's words echoed in my head. Families like yours run on guilt and loyalty. When you take those away, they crumble. I took a deep breath and whispered to the empty room. Then let it crumble. Outside, thunder rolled in the distance, low and certain, as if the sky was agreeing with me. When I finally went to bed, the USB drive sat on my nightstand beside my phone. A small, silent witness waiting for its day in court. The last thought before sleep found me was simple. They'd spent years teaching me to be responsible, patient, and quiet. Now they were about to find out what responsibility looks like when it finally fights back. I hadn't seen that many Donovans in one room since Dad's retirement party. The one where everyone toasted Sophie's new creative venture like I hadn't co-signed her lease just weeks before. Now they were gathered again, this time in Aunt Helen's living room in Bend, sipping coffee and pretending not to be curious why I'd asked for a family meeting. The room smelled like lemon polish and tension. Mom sat stiffly on the couch, pearls at her throat like armor. Sophie wore oversized sunglasses, even though it was cloudy outside. Dad avoided my eyes, studying the rug as if the pattern could explain any of this. Aunt Helen stood beside the fireplace, calm and deliberate. The only person here who looked like she wanted the truth more than comfort. I set the brown envelope on the coffee table. Before we start, I said, thank you, Aunt Helen, for hosting. I thought it would be best to do this somewhere neutral. Mom scoffed softly. What is this, Claire? An ambush? No, I said. It's an intervention. Just not the kind you're used to. Helen cleared her throat. Let her speak, Margaret. I opened the envelope and spread the documents across the table. Bank statements, emails, the property transfer, all neatly organized. These are the records of every dollar I've sent you in the last 8 years. Mortgage payments, medical bills, loans that never came back. Sophie shifted in her seat. What's this supposed to prove? Patience, I said, sliding another page forward. Here's the home equity loan you took out last year. $180,000, co-signed by you, Sophie. She blinked, caught off guard. What? No, that's real, I interrupted. You signed as a resident of the property, which you weren't. And the repayments, I pointed at the highlighted lines. They match the money I was sending every month. So, in essence, I've been paying for your fraud. The room went silent, except for the ticking clock on the mantel. Dad looked up, his voice shaky. Claire, let's not. Let's, Aunt Helen said sharply. I want to hear this. Mom's face flushed. You have no idea what we were dealing with. You think this is easy, keeping a family afloat. I laughed softly. You weren't keeping it afloat, Mom. You were drilling holes and asking me to bring buckets. Sophie pushed her sunglasses to her head, eyes wide. You don't understand. It wasn't about money. It was about saving the house from what? I asked. From being owned by the only person who actually paid for it. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. Aunt Helen picked up one of the pages, squinting. This says you transferred the deed into the Donovan family trust with Sophie as co-trustee. When did that happen? Mom looked ready to crumble. Your father and I thought it would be better for the family. Sophie has the kids. She needed stability. I cut in. And you decided I didn't. You rewarded the child who created chaos and punished the one who cleaned it up. Mom's voice rose, brittle. Don't talk to me like that, Claire. Everything we did out of love. No, I said, my tone steady. You did it out of convenience. For a moment, no one breathed. Then Helen set down the papers and looked straight at Mom. Margaret, did you forge these transfers? Mom bristled. Of course not. She didn't have to, I said. She had me trained to sign whatever she asked for. I trusted her. I trusted all of you. Sophie wiped her eyes, tears smearing her mascara. Claire, please. It's not what you think. I didn't know everything. Didn't know, or didn't want to? I asked quietly. She flinched. Dad finally spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. Maybe we went too far. We just wanted to protect what was ours. What's yours? I asked. Dad, that money came from me. From my work, my overtime, my life. You didn't protect anything. You stole it and gave it away. Helen stepped closer to me, placing a hand on my shoulder. Show them the rest. I pulled out the USB drive and set it next to the papers. This is a recording from September last year. A meeting between Mom, Sophie, and Ethan. Mom stiffened. You had no right. I didn't record it, I said. Your lawyer did. It was in the files you tried to hide. Helen nodded toward me. Play it. I connected the drive to my laptop. The speakers filled the room with the sound of clinking glasses and low conversation. Then Mom's voice emerged, clear and cutting. If Claire ever finds out, we'll tell her it was a misunderstanding. She won't fight us. She never does. The room froze. Helen's hand tightened on my shoulder. Margaret, she said slowly. That's your voice, isn't it? Mom's lips trembled. It was taken out of context. Sophie whispered. Oh my God. I paused the recording. You didn't think I'd ever stand up to you. But you were wrong. Mom's face crumpled. You're destroying this family, Claire. I leaned forward, meeting her gaze. No, Mom. I'm revealing what you built it on. Lies, manipulation, and guilt. Dad tried to speak again, but Helen stopped him. Robert, don't. You've let this go on long enough. He looked between us, defeated. What do you want from us, Claire? Accountability, I said simply. And a little honesty for once. Helen turned to the others. She's right. You've all taken advantage of her. I saw it happening years ago, and I should have said something then. Mom buried her face in her hands, shoulders shaking. We thought she'd forgive us. She always forgives. Not this time, I said softly. Sophie stood suddenly, pacing. You don't get it. I'm the one everyone expects to fail. You're the strong one, the smart one. I cut her off. That's not an excuse. That's a role you played until it became an identity. She stopped pacing, tears streaking down her face. I didn't mean for it to go this far. Neither did I. I sighed for a moment. The room was quiet again. Then Helen walked to the kitchen counter, poured herself coffee, and said calmly, "I think that's enough pretending for one lifetime." Mom looked up, eyes red. "What happens now?" I gathered the papers, sliding them back into the envelope. "Now I let the law decide." Her voice cracked. "You take your own family to court?" "I already have," I said. "You just haven't been served yet." The sound that followed was the soft clink of china as Helen set her cup down. Sophie sank back into her chair, whispering, "Claire, please don't do this." I met her eyes. "You did this when you signed those papers." I stood, tucking the envelope under my arm. "For years, you all made me believe love meant sacrifice. But I finally learned something." Mom's voice was barely a whisper. "What's that?" "That love without respect is just control." When I walked out, the air outside felt electric, charged, alive, almost clean. Rain clouds were gathering again over the Cascades. But for once, I didn't mind. As I reached my car, my phone buzzed. A text from Michael. "Dad's office just called. They're opening a formal investigation." I looked back at the house one last time, at the silhouettes moving behind the curtains. The wind picked up, cool and sharp against my face. "Good," I whispered. "Let the truth have its turn." The courtroom smelled like paper and disinfectant, the kind of sterile scent that makes even truth feel procedural. Mom sat at the defense table in her navy blazer, pearls at her throat like a costume of decency. Sophie sat beside her, pale but carefully put together, mascara painted over sleeplessness. Dad was behind them, hands clasped, eyes sunken. Michael leaned toward me and whispered, "Deep breath. You're not here to win an argument. You're here to show them what they did." I nodded, staring at the judge. A woman in her 50s with silver hair and eyes that looked like they'd seen every kind of family tragedy. Her nameplate read, Honorable Sandra Martinez. She looked at us like she already knew this wouldn't be easy. "Court is now in session," the clerk said. "Case number 24 to 397, Donovan versus Donovan." Hearing it out loud was surreal. My last name versus my own last name. Michael stood first. "Your Honor," he began, voice calm and clear. "This is not a matter of family resentment. This is a matter of financial exploitation. 8 years of deliberate deception disguised as love." Mom shifted uncomfortably. Sophie looked down at the table. Michael continued, laying out the foundation of the case. "My transfers, the fraudulent loan, the trust documents. My client was not simply generous," he said. "She was misled. Her financial support was used to sustain debt she did not consent to and to fund assets she was deliberately excluded from." The defense attorney, a man named Carmichael with a grin that didn't reach his eyes, rose smoothly. "Your Honor, this is a tragic misunderstanding between family members. No crime was intended here. Only miscommunication and good intentions gone awry." Judge Martinez raised an eyebrow. "I'll be the judge of intentions, counselor. Proceed." The first hour passed in a blur of numbers and paperwork. Every document I'd ever signed out of obligation now projected onto a courtroom screen, receipts, bank transfers, email exchanges that read like confessions. Each one a breadcrumb leading back to a truth I already knew. When it was Mom's turn to testify, she walked to the stand with slow dignity, chin lifted, tears carefully timed. "Mrs. Donovan," Michael said, "you authorized the use of your daughter's funds for your household expenses." "Correct." "I did," she said softly, "but only because we were struggling." She offered to help. "And when you took out the home equity loan," she hesitated. "That was to save the house. For the family." Michael nodded, flipping a page. "You told your lawyer last year that your daughter, Sophie, lived there full time. Was that true?" Mom's voice faltered. "Not technically." "Not technically," he repeated. "But you signed under oath." Carmichael jumped in. "Objection. Badgering." "Overruled," said the judge. "Answer the question, Mrs. Donovan." Mom's hands trembled. "I just wanted to protect our home." Michael's voice was steady. "By transferring ownership into a trust that excluded the daughter who paid for it." Mom's eyes flicked toward me, desperate. She had her own life, her own apartment. She didn't need the house. The words hit like a slap. I watched her, wondering if she could hear herself. The same woman who taught me that love meant giving. Now, admitting she took because she thought I didn't need. Michael nodded, calm as ever. No further questions. When Sophie took the stand, she looked fragile in her navy dress. Eyes rimmed red. "Mrs. Donovan," Michael began. "You co-signed the loan." "Correct." She nodded. "Dad asked me to. He said it was a formality. And you understood that your sister's funds were being used to repay that loan." "I didn't," she sobbed, wiping her eyes. "I didn't think about it." Michael let the silence linger. "But you signed documents claiming to contribute financially?" "I thought it would help," she whispered. "I didn't want to disappoint them." "Didn't want to disappoint them," he repeated softly. "Even if it meant betraying the person who kept you both afloat?" Sophie broke down crying. "I never wanted this to happen." Judge Martinez watched quietly, taking notes. Next was Dad. His testimony was the hardest to listen to. Not because he lied, but because he didn't. "Mr. Donovan," Michael said gently, Did you know your wife and daughter used Claire's funds to secure that loan? Dad hesitated, then nodded. Yes. Did you inform Claire? No. Why not? His voice cracked. Because she would have said no. Michael leaned back. So you knew it was wrong. I knew it was necessary, Dad whispered. The judge scribbled something. For the first time all morning, I saw her frown. After a brief recess, Michael called me to the stand. My palms were damp, but my voice was steady. Mrs. Donovan, he said, why did you file this case? I looked at my family before answering. Because love shouldn't mean bankruptcy. Because silence isn't loyalty, it's surrender. He nodded. Did you ever intend to recover the money? I just wanted the truth, I said. But the truth always comes with a price. Carmichael rose for cross-examination. Mrs. Donovan, would you describe yourself as close to your family? Once, I said, before I realized closeness was conditional. He smiled thinly. And yet you kept giving them money. Doesn't that imply consent? I met his gaze. It implies trust. They used that as a weapon. Carmichael hesitated, searching for footing. So this is about punishment? No, I said evenly. This is about boundaries. The ones they never respected. Even the judge's pen paused for a moment. When testimony ended, the courtroom felt drained. The air was thick with everything unspoken. The years of manipulation, the guilt, the quiet apologies that had never come. Judge Martinez folded her hands. I've reviewed the evidence. It's clear this family has been entangled in financial deception that went far beyond misunderstanding. She looked at Mom, then Sophie. You accepted financial support under false pretenses, concealed debt, and transferred property without disclosure. Mom's lips trembled. Sophie looked ready to vanish. The court rules in favor of the plaintiff, the judge said. Miss Donovan, you are awarded $75,000 in restitution and legal costs, and the home deed is to be restored under your sole ownership. The words rang in my ears. Steady and final. Restitution. Ownership. Truth. Mom gasped softly. Sophie covered her face. Dad stared at the floor. I didn't smile. I didn't feel victorious. What I felt was air, clean, cold, full of space where guilt used to live. When we left the courtroom, reporters crowded the steps, shouting questions. Michael guided me through them, his hand steady on my arm. One reporter yelled, Claire, do you have a statement for your family? I stopped for a second, turned toward the flashing cameras. I hope they learned what I did, I said. That peace built on lies doesn't last. Michael leaned close. That'll be on every headline tomorrow. I know, I said, and I'm fine with that. By the time I reached my car, the sky had cleared. Sunlight spilled across the wet pavement, reflecting off puddles like mirrors. My phone buzzed. A text from Aunt Helen. Your father left something else in the bank safe. Come see me. I stared at the message, then looked back at the courthouse. The building stood tall and gray behind me, its steps shining like new stone after rain. For the first time, I didn't feel like the family's fixer or the forgotten daughter. I felt like the woman who finally told the truth and survived it. Aunt Helen lived in a quiet neighborhood near Ben's Old Mill district, in a little white house with blue shutters that always smelled like cedar and coffee. When I pulled into her driveway, the late afternoon light was warm and soft, cutting through the trees like something from a memory I'd forgotten to miss. She met me at the door before I could knock. You look thinner, she said, pulling me into a hug that lasted a second too long. I feel lighter, I said. Not the same thing, but close. She smiled. You always did carry everyone else's weight. Inside, her living room was neat but lived in. Shelves of old books, family photos from a time before things got complicated. I noticed a framed picture of my dad as a young man in uniform, smiling like someone who hadn't yet learned how to break the things he loved. Helen gestured toward the kitchen table. It's there, she said. What your father left you. A small, fireproof box sat in the center, the kind you'd expect to find in a lawyer's office or a bank vault. She handed me the key. He asked me to hold it years ago. Said it was when Claire needed to know the truth. I didn't open it. Thought that should be your choice. My throat tightened. When did he give it to you? Summer of 2022. Just before Sophie's divorce. She poured coffee for both of us, then sat down across the table. He looked tired, like he'd been carrying something heavier than guilt. I stared at the box. You really didn't peek. She smiled faintly. Tried, but no. I figured whatever was inside would find you when it was time. I turned the key. The lock clicked open with a soft metallic sigh. Inside were neatly stacked envelopes, a leather notebook, and a flash drive. The first envelope was labeled in Dad's handwriting, for Claire. I opened it slowly, unfolding a letter written in the kind of uneven script that comes from shaking hands. Claire, if you're reading this, it means I didn't have the courage to tell you myself. You were always the strong one, the one who saved us when we didn't deserve it. Your mother and I made mistakes, big ones, and I'm not sure I even understand why we did. Maybe pride, maybe fear. But I know you carry the burden of every bad decision we made. There's a second account at First Ben Savings under your name. I set it up years ago after realizing how much you were sacrificing. It isn't much, but it's yours. Real honest earned. No strings attached. Consider it a start towards something better than all this. I'm sorry for what we did. For what I didn't stop. For watching you drown in the name of family. Dad! I read it twice before realizing I was crying. The quiet kind of crying that doesn't sound like grief, but relief. Helen reached across the table and squeezed my hand. He wasn't a cruel man, Claire. Just a weak one. I know, I whispered. That's the part that hurts the most. The leather notebook was next. It was filled with financial notes, bank records, and scribbled thoughts, his own version of confession. He documented everything. The refinancing plan, the way Mom had convinced him it was temporary, the slow slide from justification into deceit. And then I found something else. An email printout dated 3 weeks before Sophie's wedding. It was from Mom to their attorney. Finalize the trust documents before the ceremony. We'll announce the transfer after New Year's. Claire won't object. She never does. Helen leaned forward as I read it out loud. She really wrote that? I nodded. She never thought I'd fight back. What will you do with it? I looked at the pages, then back at her. Nothing legal. The court's done its job. This is just proof that I wasn't crazy. She smiled softly. Sometimes that's all justice really is, being believed. We sat there for a while in silence, the late afternoon fading into amber light. Finally, Helen said, "He left something else for you." She pointed to the flash drive. "I don't know what's on it, but he said it would help you understand." I plugged it into my laptop. A video file appeared, dated December 28th, 2024, 3 days before Sophie's wedding. When I hit play, my father's face filled the screen. He was sitting in his workshop, wearing that old plaid shirt I used to steal when I visited home. "Hey, Claire," he said, smiling awkwardly. "If you're seeing this, it's probably because things didn't go the way I hoped. I wanted to explain a few things before you hear them from everyone else." He sighed, rubbing his forehead. "Your mother's been planning to transfer the house to Sophie for months. I tried to stop it, but I didn't fight hard enough. You know me. Conflict's never been my strength." He looked up at the camera, eyes glassy. "But I need you to know something. I never thought of you as just the responsible one. You were the heart of this family, even when we didn't deserve it. If we lose you, that's on me." He paused, swallowing hard. "I set up that account because I wanted you to have something that was truly yours. It's not much, but it's a beginning. Maybe one day you'll forgive us, or maybe you won't. Either way, I hope you'll live free of us. Don't let our mistakes become your legacy." The video ended there, just a still frame of him sitting in that quiet workshop, surrounded by tools and sawdust and regret. Helen's eyes were wet when I looked up. "He meant it, you know." "I think he did," I said. We sat in silence for a while. The clock ticked softly in the corner. The kind of sound that usually made me anxious, but now it felt steady, like something moving forward instead of circling back. When I finally left Helen's house, dusk had settled over the trees. The air was crisp, the sky streaked with fading orange. She walked me to the door and hugged me again. "You did the right thing," she said. "Sometimes it doesn't feel like it." "Then that means you really did," she said, smiling. "The right thing never feels easy." On the drive back to Portland, I thought about that video, about the way my father looked into the camera like he was talking to a ghost. I realized he hadn't been confessing to clear his conscience. He'd been giving me permission to stop carrying theirs. When I got home, I logged into the bank he'd mentioned. The account was real, small but untouched. It wasn't about the money. It was proof that he'd seen me, maybe too late, but still. For the first time in years, I slept without waking at 3 a.m. thinking about what I owed someone. The next morning, I called Michael to tell him about the box. He listened quietly. "You're not obligated to share any of it," he said. "The case is closed." "I know," I said. "But maybe it's not about obligation." He hesitated. "You're thinking of telling them." "Not Mom. Not yet. But Sophie deserves to know the truth. The real truth, not just the headlines." He sighed. "You're braver than I am." "Maybe," I said. "Or maybe I'm just finally done being afraid of what honesty costs." After we hung up, I wrote Sophie a letter. I didn't defend her, and I didn't condemn her. I just told her what Dad said, that love without respect is control, and that she deserved to build something better than what we inherited. I slipped a copy of his note inside and mailed it to her apartment. By the time the sun set that evening, I felt something strange in my chest. Not victory, not forgiveness exactly, but peace shaped like distance. For once, I wasn't holding the family together. I was letting it fall apart the way it was meant to, so we could all start again, separately. Honestly, 1 year later, I woke up to the sound of rain against the windows. The kind of soft, rhythmic rain Portland does best. The clock on my nightstand read 8 a.m. It was New Year's Day. The irony didn't escape me. Last year at this time, my family had been celebrating Sophie's wedding, and I'd been home alone, feeling like the disposable daughter. Now the house that used to be their prize sat quietly under my name. And for the first time in my life, I didn't owe anyone anything. The air smelled faintly of coffee and cedar from the candle burning in the kitchen. I padded barefoot across the hardwood floors I'd refinished myself last spring. The walls were lighter now, No longer yellow with my mother's old taste, but painted warm white, clean and open. I'd sold half the furniture, given away the rest. The house finally looked like it belonged to someone who'd stopped apologizing for taking up space. On the kitchen counter was a small stack of mail. The top envelope was from Jefferson County Family Services, an update about Sophie's custody case. I'd become the emergency contact for Emma and Lucas after their father's unexpected illness last fall. The letter said both kids were thriving in school and that Sophie had completed her sobriety program. I set it down carefully, a small, quiet relief warming my chest. I poured coffee and stood by the window, watching rain trail down the glass. A single text notification glowed on my phone. Happy New Year, Claire. Thank you for the letter. I'm doing better. The kids miss you. XOS. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't forgiveness either. It was something in between. Truths, maybe. And that was enough. By 9, I was already dressed for my shift at the nonprofit downtown. After everything that had happened, I'd started volunteering with the Portland Financial Justice Initiative, a small program that helped adults recover from family-based financial abuse. I'd spoken there once, thinking it would be just one talk. But when I saw the faces in the audience, men and women, who'd been drained dry by their own relatives, I couldn't walk away. Within months, they'd offered me a part-time position coordinating recovery workshops. It was the kind of work that healed you while you helped others. The office was quiet when I arrived. A few coworkers waved as I slipped into the conference room where a new support group was starting. 20 people sat in a circle, clutching coffee cups and notebooks. Some looked angry, others hollow. I recognized myself in all of them. I stood, smiled gently, and began. My name's Claire. I used to think helping meant giving until I had nothing left. But the truth is, love without limits becomes permission. And when you stop being the family bank, you start being a person again. A few people nodded. One woman wiped her eyes. I continued, telling pieces of my story. Not the tabloid version, not the courtroom drama, but the quiet truth about guilt, loyalty, and the courage it takes to choose yourself. When I finished, a man across the circle raised his hand. So, what happened to your family? I smiled faintly. They learned how to live within their means, and I learned how to live without their approval. The room was silent for a beat, then soft laughter rippled through the group. It was the kind of laughter that said, we understand. After the session, as I was packing up, a familiar voice spoke from the doorway. That was beautiful. I turned to see Michael leaning against the frame, holding 2 cups of coffee. He looked different, relaxed, less like a man carrying other people's secrets for a living. Didn't expect to see you here, I said, smiling. He handed me a cup. I had a meeting nearby. Thought I'd check in on my favorite client. I took a sip. You're late for that title. I retired from drama a while ago. He grinned. I'll believe that when I stop getting news alerts about you being quoted in advocacy articles. I only say yes to the ones that don't ask about my mother, I said. He nodded approvingly. Progress. We walked out together, the city still damp from morning rain. He looked at the sky, then at me. You ever think about what's next after all this? I considered it. I used to think next meant fixing them, proving something. Now I think it just means peace. He smiled. Peace looks good on you. By noon, the clouds had started to break. Sunlight spilled through the gray, brightening the streets, making everything glisten. I drove home with the radio off, letting the quiet fill the car. When I pulled into the driveway, a small blue sedan was parked at the curb. For a moment, I froze. Then I saw her. Sophie. She was standing in the drizzle, holding a cardboard box. She looked smaller than I remembered, older too, but her eyes were steady. Hey, she said softly when I got out. Hey, I replied. I didn't want to come unannounced, she said, glancing toward the porch. But I figured you'd be home today. What's in the box? She looked down, then handed it to me. Dad's things. I found them when Mom moved into her new apartment. They're stuff from the household, photos, the watch she gave him. I took the box. Thank you. We stood there in silence, rain misting around us. Finally, she said, I saw your interview last month, the one about financial recovery. You said something about boundaries being a form of love. I didn't understand it then, but she looked up, eyes glassy. I think I do now. I didn't say anything, just nodded. She took a breath. I'm sorry, Claire. For everything. For what I signed, for what I didn't stop, for pretending I didn't know. The words came slow, fragile, but real. I exhaled long and steady. I know, I said. And I believe you. We stood there for a while, 2 sisters in the rain, the ghosts of our old lives, finally fading into the background. When she left, I carried the box inside and set it on the kitchen counter. Inside, beneath the photos and letters, was Dad's old pocket watch, still ticking. It felt like a small miracle, hearing time keep going even after everything stopped. That night, I sat by the window with a glass of wine, watching the lights of the neighborhood shimmer through the drizzle. The house was quiet, but not lonely, just alive. On the table beside me was a stack of letters from women in the program. Thank you stories, confessions. One read, "You helped me realize I'm not the problem for saying no. I'm the reason I can start again." I smiled, folded it carefully, and added it to the growing pile. Somewhere outside, fireworks started early. Bright bursts of color reflecting off the wet street. I thought about the girl I used to be, sitting alone last New Year's Eve, waiting for a call that would never come. She'd been hurt, invisible, desperate to be loved the way she loved others. I wanted to tell her something now, that one day she'd wake up and not need anyone's permission to feel worthy. I stood, raised my glass to the window, and whispered, "To endings that turn into beginnings." The rain eased. The city glowed. My reflection in the glass looked calm, almost unfamiliar. And somewhere deep inside, I finally believed it. Peace wasn't something you found in other people. It was something you built, one boundary at a time. Honestly, after hearing all this, what would you have done in my place? Have you ever had to choose between family loyalty and your own self-worth? Let me know in the comments below. I truly want to hear your thoughts.